everyone. Hi. Thanks for joining in again for the second day today, and we've got Vinayak here, and yes, so the same thing what we did yesterday, but in a better way. Okay, I'll let Vinayak explain everything. Go on, Vinayak.
Hi everyone. Hope everyone is doing well, and hopefully everyone is excited as I am. Also, not as anxious or nervous as I am, but we'll see how it goes. Um, so yesterday, if you remember, we what we did was we basically set up authentication in our React app, and so how we can do everything. I think there are a couple of things that I missed on, so I'll try and cover them first. But just as a reminder, what we're trying to do in these series is we are just trying to show how we can quickly convert our ideas into actual apps. So, always whenever we think of creating some apps, we always think of, oh, okay, how we need to write all the authentication, how do we handle all this, how do we handle the security of the apps, and all that kind of thing. So, I think that's the main things I think takes a lot of time. And also, I have noticed that quite a lot of my friends they release the app, and then what happens is next they will start to get some attacks or some other things, some issues. So there are many things that you need to always think of if in case your app goes viral. So whether your app is scalable or not, and that kind of thing. So I think that's the main goal for this series to see how we can do everything and how we can leverage AWS services, especially the Amplify, to do the same thing. So if I just try and socialize, just start sharing my screen and we'll
Go
just
on,
go
go
through
on.
what we did. Yeah. So, so I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let me just set everything first for myself.
I'll just go back in the background, okay?
Okay, yeah, sure. No worries. Okay, cool. So if you remember what we did yesterday, we did this login, and if I just log in again, we looked at this as well, right? So we looked at SMS. Uh, we'll see another type of multi-factor authentication, which is this TOTP, which is like a time-based one-time password. Or we can actually use authenticator apps if you're aware of them, the Google Authenticator, where you can generate it will keep on generating new code every 30 seconds or 60 seconds or something like that, and you can use them as well as a to say. The reason behind using that is using SMS is really good. That way, you actually verify their mobile number as well, just in case. So if any user does something wrong, so we always have the verified mobile number and all that kind of things. But um, also, there is other thing to think about or consider is the costing. So if you're using SMSs, so obviously it's going to cost you a little bit more than the other ways. So if you have like 10,000 users and if you want to enable the two-factor authentication all the time, or which is if you want to make it mandatory, so what I would suggest is using this. And the way it works is so again, everything else is same as before. So I haven't changed anything in here and I haven't changed anything in here. So everything is same as it is. And we still got the same. So basically whatever we did yesterday, so everything is still optional. So MFA is optional. So if I just go back and if I select TOTP instead of SMS and press verify,
So that's
you see what it does.
time-based
Yeah,
one-time password, right? So
one-time
this
password.
is
Yeah.
more commonly used with Google Authenticator and other
Yeah,
authenticator
exactly.
apps.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So when I selected this, so you can see that it's showing me some sort of like a QR code. So what it's just saying is that if you have any, so I'm just going to quickly open the Authenticator app, and I'm just going to scan this code. So as soon as I scan this code, it basically adds that another app in my Google Authenticator. And then if I just go ahead and grab the code which you just generated,
Sorry, where is your Google
it's
Authenticator? Is it in your mobile or is it in the browser?
yeah, it's in my mobile. So
Ah,
what I did
okay.
was in my mobile in Google Authenticator, I just opened Google Authenticator and just scan this QR code that is displayed on the screen. So ideally, what will happen is when so let's say you have like a user account section in your app where they can set up all the settings for them for their account, and in that there will be one section for two-factor authentication as well. So instead of using this standard tool, you will actually, excuse me, you'll actually create your own radio buttons or whatever where you want drop down or whatever to select the type. And then after select, if they select this, there is a method to again to update. As soon as you update, it's going to give you some sort of like QR code. So you basically or the link, so you can actually display that QR code. You can style it the way you want, and just so that they can set it up, so they you can enter some instructions like scan this QR code in your Google Authenticator and enter the code. So like it's just saying in short that scan this code and generate new security code and enter that. So it's just about to create a new one. So I'm just going to enter that one. So it's 43124. So this code, I'm just grabbing it from the Google Authenticator, and it's not from SMS. And if I just press verify token, so there you go. So you can see that setup OTP is successfully. So if I now just sign out, and if I again sign back in, now what's going to do is it's going to ask me. So it's saying that TOTP code. So instead in here again, like we seen before, so we can always, if you're using your UI, then that's good. If you're not using your UI, you can always customize all these messages. And then here you can say that, open a Google Authenticator and just enter the code or something like that. So you can give instructions. So if I just go ahead and enter the new code generated for this app, 716. There you go. So it's all working. It just remembers the previous page. But yeah, you can see that it's so easy it is to just even integrate Google Authenticator. I think there are a few other apps as well which all work the same way. So I think Microsoft has their own authenticator. So you can use that. You can use Google or you can use whichever you want. So it's up to you. And yeah, the other things that we were talking about, like the customization. So here there are things like how you can customize the messages that are sent out. So in here, SMS or the email. And then if it is a MFA, which is the SMS that goes out, if you are using the way to send the code, then you can customize that message in here. All you have to make sure is you add this code so that this code will get replaced. This tag will get replaced with the actual code itself. Same case in emails and everywhere else. And then there are other things like UI customization, where you can actually upload your logo, or if you have any labels and things like that, input styles and all that kind of things, you can actually customize them in here. I think there is a way. Yeah, I think you can just select the app you want to customize, or you can actually apply to all the apps that you have. And other thing I want to show quickly is, I think there are two links I just saved. So in here, you can see that there are a few ways to customize your CSS as well. So if you're using CSS, so for example, you can see the by default, all the buttons are like the orangey color, which is the Amazon standard. So if you want to customize all of them, so you got all these different type of color variables or basically variables used for different things like the sizes, text sizes, and all that kind of thing. So you can actually go ahead and then modify these as well. So if I just go and grab, let's see what's in here. And if I just add them in here, So this is more like a orange again, but it's a bit different. So you can see it's changed instead of that Amazon orange, so it's more uh, darker orange. And if I just log out, you can see all the text colors and other things like the link colors and the button colors, they are all changed as well. So this way you can actually change it to anything you like. If I just pick something what I got. So I'm just copying it styles that I like. So I usually just try to use this color. And yeah, so as you can see, it's not that difficult to change the styles for your text or your colors for your buttons and everything. And to be honest, I think you're not going to be so bothered about changing so many things when you're trying to build some app for yourself or as an idea or MVP. So there is nothing much more anyway. So the buttons or the text boxes or links. So once you do that, that should be enough. There are other things as well. So in the Amplify framework, so you can customize a lot of other their components. So if you're using, depending on whether it's a web app or mobile app, you can customize literally quite a lot. So as you can see here, they have like color shades, different color shades. So you can set up a color shades. You can set up, I think that we already saw these as in here as well, the text sizes and the colors and shades and everything. So you can do the same thing for all different type of components that you use for if it is for mobile as well. So you can see they are just basically trying to style this the Google Authenticator or the QR code, barcode thing. So you can use a lot of different customizations to do that. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to show. What we will do is, I think, next thing I think we basically need to finish the whole app today. So I think next thing we should do is we should,
Demo time.
sh- yeah, no, actually we'll just go through step because it's a
Okay.
bit complicated. So there are, if I just show the app which I showed yesterday with the
Yeah.
completed one.
Okay. Carry on then.
So this is what it looks like, right? So we have quite a few things to develop. First thing is like the UI. The second thing is we want to set up a state provider so that we can actually we are going to use context API. So we'll go through that what it is, and so we are going to use that to store all the messages and everything, the rooms and all. And then the third thing is the GraphQL API to actually store all the messages and rooms and everything in our AWS database and see how the real-time updates works as well. Um, so I think we'll start with the UI. And what we will do is we'll kind of like set up a skeleton and then we'll move to probably, we'll see, we'll move to either a context API or set up the APIs, GraphQL API. So if I just go to Chakra UI, so Chakra UI is it's basically again what they have done is like they have created a style props rather than using style tags, or if instead of say writing style equal to the width and this and that and all. So they actually did what they did is that they created a style props. So if I show you example, so here you can see like they have different type of props. Again, these are quite basic ones, but they got few other ones as well. So the most of the times we use this. So if you have, for example, you can always mix and match as well. So if you have like standard widths and margins and that kind of stuff for the main components, you can always add them. And then things like wherever you need to modify the width or margins or padding, and also you can always use this prop as well. So the way you use is like, so the box is again another component. Most of the components from Chakra UI, they get converted into divs in the end, but there are certain components as well, which are like text or not text, the input, or there are certain types of inputs as well, which gets converted into again HTML input. So the way you use is instead of saying style equal to in brackets whatever the tags you want to change, you actually do M or so for they got quite few different ways you can write. So if for margin you can just type M or you can type margin. Similarly, MT, MR, they are basically like margin top, margin right, bottom. Similarly for padding and all. So yeah, so what you would do is like if it is just a number, so you can just always excuse me, enter it in the brackets. If not, you can actually just enter them in double quote as well. And another good thing is also that these props they actually also give you sort of like autocomplete as well. So in things like in this case or in terms of let's say probably some font sizes and things like that. I think they got different font sizes like small, XL, and large and medium and everything. So we'll have a look at them as well. They also got another good thing is like for the color, so you can actually you can set these all in the theme. What do you want your gray 50 shade to look like and gray 100 shade to look like and all other shades. So similarly, you can write your own shades and you can just basically add them in here. There is also something called color scheme. I'm not sure if it's here. But yeah, so that's what basically it is. So feel free to go through their documentation and see what are the other things. So color modes here you can see. So the color mode is basically, which is we are going to use. It's basically to let you know whether they are using dark mode or a light mode. So if it is a light mode, what you can change the styles. If it is a dark mode, you can change that. So the way you do is like something like this. So use import the color mode from the use color mode, which is again a hook, and you can just check color mode. If it is a light, then display this, which basically is saying that if it is a light mode, then you want to show that change it to dark mode, or if it is dark, then change it to light. So yeah, that's quite simple as well. And yeah, there are many different things well, props again for to make the things responsive. So don't think I wanted to show you. So yeah, I think what we should do is rather than talking here, let's just start writing some code in here, and then we'll go through those some of these props. So what we are going to do in terms of UI, this is a little bit added. So we are going to have an app which I already got. So app component is our main component. Inside app, what we're going to do is it's basically render the home component, which is going to contain the whole page where we see all the chat rooms and everything. Inside the home component, we want to have navbar on the top, and then the under the navbar is going to be all content. And the content is going to be split in two different things. One is room listing on the left and the chat messages on the right. And then again, chat messages will have chat messages, actual messages on the top, and then at the bottom we are going to have input box where user can enter the message, right? So
Quick question.
yeah, sure, one.
I got a message in the YouTube saying like, are we also talking about mobile app here?
Um, yes, we can.
Okay. So this is going to be a
Uh,
responsive design then in that case.
well, that's not really, to be honest, that's not my goal. My goal
Okay.
is basically to show how you actually set up your database, how you
Yeah,
actually set up your GraphQL API without having to worry about how
that's
to set
awesome.
up a
Okay.
MongoDB database or all other kind of things, how to set up your authentication and all. And
Perfect.
with regards to mobile app, I think nothing is going to change apart from instead of using the, for example,
Just the CSS part.
this no, yeah, I mean, CSS, if you're, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think CSS will change if you're using, again, there'll be different component libraries that you can use
Right.
for styling your components and all. of style components. But the main thing that will change compared to the AWS, as long as the AWS is concerned, is instead of importing kind of like this authenticator or the sign
Right.
up, sign out forms and all from the React, you
Hmm.
will there is another library for React Native. That's the
Okay.
one you will be using.
So the only
But
difference will be React Native library
yeah,
should be using. Okay, sure, sure, sure.
yeah,
Okay, you
that's
can.
all.
Sorry.
So there is nothing much other
All right.
differences.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, I think there is another thing. Just think it'll be good to mention. So whoever watching live, I think if you have any questions or if you have any doubts, you can always add them in chat. But if you're watching this afterwards in the recordings, then obviously just feel free to just ask your questions in comments, and we'll try to answer them for sure. So yeah, this is the basic structure that we're gonna have. So what I would like to do is give me a second. So I think we should just go ahead and start creating these components. Let's see what we got. Okay, and yeah, I think we haven't set up the Chakra UI completely. So I think let's just do that first. Okay. Right. So what we are going to do is we are going to just import a couple of things. I'm just going to copy paste and then I'm going to tell you what exactly it is. So basically what you do is to use Chakra UI as a globally theme provider or whatever the style provider across your web application, you will import this Chakra provider, and then what you will do is just wrap the whole app inside that provider. So far you're not going to see much difference apart from, so it just remembers the previously I selected dark mode, and it's just going to use that and just displaying that. But we'll see how to change that in a minute. And then what you can do is, like, instead of using their standard theme, you can actually create a theme as well. So the way you can create a theme is something like this. So again, if you go back to the customization, here you can see. So you can use extend a theme if you are going to just extend. And they have like different components, and for the button, page style, what do you want to set the font to, then the sizes, again, Excel, how much should be the height for that, and the font size and the pixels. I'm not sure what that is. Then the variants as well. So they have different type of variants. Things like, I think if you want to see just the coast where you don't see any borders for the buttons and things like that, or if they have outlined where you see only the borders and things like that. So you can actually change all the styles in here as well. So feel free to just go through everything in here, and if you have any questions, you can ask. So in here, just an example. Again, it's just a standard theme, but I'm just going to quickly go through it. So again, if you know what this is, three dots, it's just a spread operator. So what it means is, like, I'm just going to take everything from the theme, which is the default theme from the Chakra UI, so as the base, and then only things that I'm going to override is colors. Inside colors, again, I want to bring all the colors from the theme, default theme, but in the main theme, main colors, I want to change again the same, bring all the colors for the shade 50. I want to use this shade 100. I want to use this, and so on and so forth. Similarly, for secondary, I want to use this color for the background and things like that. And for nav item and all that. And the way to use that is basically you just import. And what we do in here is, so it accepts the prop called theme. And in here, you can just pass the themes, and that all the colors from there or the overrides from there will be applied across your whole app. So yeah, that's how easy it is. So again, there is nothing in here special I'm using, so I'm just gonna get rid of that, and I'm just gonna keep it as simple as it is. So let me just see. Yeah, I think so. We should just start writing our components. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to start writing blank components. If you have any questions, feel free to ask the questions. Uh, Let me just get the chat in here as well. Okay, so no more questions. So yeah, so what I want to do is I want to just get rid of all this. And I think if you remember, what we did was once user logs in, we just displaying. Okay, now I'm just need to remove this. 661471. Let's just get rid of that first. Yeah. So we're just displaying nothing in here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of everything, and let's just start creating some folders. So we're gonna have some components, and inside components, what I want to have is home component, then yeah, that's fine. So if you don't know, I'm just using these shortcuts snippets, which are, so this is the ES7 snippet, the extension that I'm using for the snippet. So if you want to just use that as well, feel free to use that. So what I did was RAFCE. It's so they have different snippets. RFC will just create a same thing, but instead of calling it as a constant and exporting constant, it will just create a function company using function. But if I do RAFCE, then it's just going to create a constant component, constant as that function, and just export that constant. So usually, I think that's the way I prefer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly create those empty components. Let's see. So yeah, so we're going to have home. Inside the home, as we said, we're going to have nav, which we're going to have again here. And then after that, what I want is chat component, no, the rooms component as well. So So I'm gonna have that array, and then after that, what I want to have chat component. That's all. And then what I want to do, I want to just usually just export them in here. So I don't need to really type the whole path to import those components. Let me just see quickly. Oh yeah, we need message component, but we'll display them as we go. So, and in here, what I want to do is just want to import that. So instead of here, actually, I'll just rename this as components. And so the difference is, as you can see in here, I imported home as like this. So instead of doing that, what I can do now is something like this. And if I want to import all other components as well, so I can see if I just do this. No, that's why. So yeah, you can see we can actually just import this way, so I don't need to do the same thing. I don't need to enter the whole path. So in here, if I just go to our home component and just say, no, it's the same. Oh, right. Let me just see what's wrong. All right. I actually didn't export. Yeah, I don't know why I need to write this. Well, I guess yeah, I could have actually changed it as a syntax, but right. Anyway, so you can see that so we just created the home component. So what I'm going to do is, so inside our home component, we will have something like, actually, instead of just writing the demo, what I'll do is I'll probably start adding some code from the existing app, and I'll try and explain what we are doing in there. That way, I think it'll be a bit quicker and also will save some time as well. So I'm just going to grab some stuff. So don't worry if you don't get it. I'll explain all that in a minute.
No questions so far.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so it should be fine. Right, okay, I think it's probably, yeah, it's fine. We'll just carry on and then I'll just copy the now tab so that we actually can change the, okay, yeah, right. So I think I forgot another stage as always. So what we need to do is first we need to install the other things that we need. So we install Chakra UI. I'm using a couple of other things as well. So let's just go and discuss what are those other things that we want to install and what are we going to use them for. So there is a React icons library. Yeah, so I'm just going to use this React icons because only because they have like a huge collection of different types of icons, literally for everything that you need, and it's quite good as well. So very easy to use as well. So I'm just gonna create another. Let me see what else do we need. So we don't need anything else, I think. Yeah, that's all we should. I think we should be all right with that. Yeah. So let me just quickly change this so that we can see it much better. Okay, if I just go to now, see why is it. Okay, I'm just gonna quickly grab images. Yeah. So all I did was basically I created a flexbox. So flexbox, if you don't know flexbox, is basically so there are many ways you can align your layout your components. So one of them is a Flexbox. You can use a grid and many other ways as well. So with Flexbox, I can just tell instead of telling the exact width and all, I can actually say, okay, I want this part to take only 10% or 5% or whatever of the whole width, and the rest should be for the remaining components or something like that. So that's why I'm just using Flexbox. I'm gonna say 100% width, align all the items to center, justify everything. So it just basically means what means is that the whole use the whole area of the page as a main div, and then inside that main div, I'm gonna have a now on the top, and then the remaining is going to be another flexbox, which we will fill in a minute. So in now, what I did, we'll go through the code as well in a minute, but I will just go through the HTML for that. So again, in nav is another flex box with the position fixed. It's going to always stay in the top, so it's not going to, if you have any scrolls or anything, it's not going to move. Minimum height, we set it to only 6 pixels so that it doesn't squeeze the text and all. We're going to have some margin top and set index so that it just stays on top of everything if you have scrolls. We don't really need this, but basically, I think uh, if you have them, I think it's just going to make it foolproof so that if we scroll, it's going to stay there and it's not going to be overlapped by any other text containers or anything. So inside that, I'm going to have another container component from Chakra UI and just going to set it to maybe 100 width so that it's just taking the whole width. Inside that, if I just this, so it'll be much easier. So inside the container, I'm going to create a stack. Stack is another way to basically arrange your components or arrange your divs inside the div. Inside that stack, all I'm saying is align everything to center, and the stack the flow direction is going to be in row. Uh, Images, actually, I don't know why I use stack. It should have been because these things are not going to make any difference anyway. Because this is for flex box. Yeah. So inside that, we are going to have one image, which is this image. And then after that, I'm going to have one text, which is just going to say chat app. Then next to that, I want to have, so far it's this one. Next, I want to have another stack, which is going to contain all these buttons and everything, other components, and so that I can move that stack to the right side. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm creating new stack, margin left to auto so that it just stays always to the right side. And then inside, I'm just creating another stack to make it everything in line. So all the elements inside that, they will stay in the same line. Excuse me. And then in there, I'm using icon button, which is this button to change the dark mode to light mode and basically. And then after that, I have avatar. So again, this is another component, ready component from Chakra UI, where you can, if you have an image for the user, you can actually use that image profile picture, or if you don't, then you can actually only set the name. And what it's going to do, if you have a space in between there, it's going to take the first letter of both names and just display it something like this. You probably have seen this. So if you also provide a picture as well as name, what it's going to do is it's going to try and render that display the image first. And if the image is not available, then it's going to display the text. And I'm just setting the margin right to just 2 pixels. And then after that, we are going to have the sign out button. So in here, we are not going to use that Amplify ready sign out button. We are just going to create our own button, and we are going to set our sign out method as well. So that's all in there. So all the code is going to be on GitHub again. You can so always just feel free to go through everything and see how it's all aligned. I'm sure there'll be a lot of issues as well because I'm not really that great with the CSS and all that kind of thing. So the design is not my thing. So yeah, feel free to make any changes and just play around with it. So in here, what we are doing, we are just having one use effect hook, um, and we have one method to basically do the sign out. So if you just look at the sign out, all it does is we already know the auth class from Amplify, and which has a sign out method. So all we do is auth of sign out, and that's it. So it will take care of everything else. And in use effect, so what I'm doing, because we want to display the name of the person, the user logged in, so we need to get a user. So the best way to do that is when the component is getting loaded. So again, there are many ways. So I haven't really gone in more details to move this user object or create a global user object and things like that. The reason actually, so if we do something like this, outdoor current authenticated user, you actually get the user object in anywhere in your application. But more than that, if you can go, if you want to go another one step ahead, you can actually store that in your state as well. But I wouldn't really recommend that in case user signs out and the stays there. But yeah, there is other ways as well. So all I'm doing here in this use effect is I'm just creating async function. What it's going to do is it's just going to get the user object and set that to this user object. And this is again another use statement hook. And so that way we basically get our user, and the way we print it is user dot attributes dot given name and family name. So now the question mark here is mainly because when the component gets loaded, not necessarily where we will have the user right away, which is why so initially it will be null or undefined. So that's why we are just adding this question mark. So if only if the user exists or it is loaded, then go ahead and display the given name and family name attribute. And then the second thing I want to show in here is the button to change the dark mode to light mode. So this is just a simple button, and on click of that, I want to just call this method. And if you see, it changes the icon. So the way it's done is I'm just importing the color mode from use color, which is another hook from Chakra UI. So what that hook does is it gives you method to update the color mode as well as tells you what is the current color mode as well. So what I'm doing here is if the color mode is light, just display dark as a label, and if it is dark, then display light as a label. Similarly, icon, I want to change if it is a current mode is light, then I want to display the moon icon, and if it is dark, then I want to say the sun. I want to display the sun icon. And on click of that, all we are doing is we are just going to call this toggle color mode. And since the method, so since there are only two modes, light and dark, all it's going to do is as soon as we call this method, it's just going to toggle the mode. So if it is light, it's going to change it to dark, and if it's dark, it's just going to change it to light. So that's how it's working. So if we just go, yeah, there you go. And our logout button, it also works. So if I just go ahead and log in again, yeah, we should see this. And the good thing about using this hooks from Chakra is that it's going to remember. So next time, if I just sign out, it will still remember. Yeah, so it's just going to remember everything. Yeah. Don't know what happened there, but it was showing you. So yeah, so we got our navbar. So what we want to, I want to start writing some layout for rooms again to save time. I'm going to just grab the code and I'm going to explain what I'm doing in there as well. I'm just going to import it. Just going to disable for a minute. So if I just go to our home component and if I just bring in this, so yeah, as you can see, so we got the button and the list of rooms. So I'm just quickly going to go through what I did in here. So again, I'm just adding, where's it gone? I'm just adding another, let me just do this so we can see it much better. So I'm going to add one box, and if you remember, we have a flex box, and then inside, sorry, yeah, flex box. Inside the flex box, we're going to have rooms and then the chat components. So the flex box, since because it's a flex box, what we're saying is for this rooms part, we're just going to take only 2% or 20% of the screen. It's going to give we're going to give you some a little bit of shadow. So again, the things like this are really good from Chakra. So things like box shadow. So you probably need to write some lot of you'll have to try out, and you may probably find it a little bit difficult to add shadows and alpha. Here you can't really see much, but let me just add it to that. I don't know if you can see in here correctly, but it's basically adding a shadow because of the colors, it's not so visible. But this is the way you would basically add some shadows to your boxes. Again, I'm going to just add a margin bottom, and we'll see how it goes. And then I'll tell you why those margins and all are in there. But basically, what I want to do is when we scroll, it's going to cut off some of the elements. So that's why I'm just adding some margin at the bottom. Inside the box, I'm going to have another box which has, don't really need this. So which has basically the button to add new room, and that room is just color scheme. I'm going to use primary. Again, as we already seen that the primary colors and secondary colors, and also you can change them. You can change your shade, how much you want to change the shade to from 50 or 100 or whatever. And the variant is going to be outlined. So there are many different ways you can style your buttons. So one of them is outline, where it just adds only the borders, and then it's going to take 100% of the width. And after that, I'm just adding another divider and then the box. And we disable, if you remember, we disable the scroll in the whole app. So that's why what I'm, because I don't really want to scroll, let the user to scroll the whole page. Rather, I would just make it so that you can scroll inside the rooms and the chat message itself. So that's why I'm just adding overflow to scroll for just for this box. Inside that, we are going to have our list, which is going to have all the rooms. So for now, we're just showing in here. So what I want to do would probably, actually, I'll just copy everything and I'm just gonna start showing them. I think that way is much better. So I'm just gonna disable this because we still don't have context API set up. Right, okay. Let's do that. I think it's better we start with the context API because I think it's just going to be easier so we have some data to play with. So if we just go, so I don't know if you everyone knows, it's context API is basically just gives you sort of like a reducer, which are again type of hooks from React. So instead of using use state hook in your component, which just basically maintains the state only for that one component, you can actually use the reducers and context APIs to create your own central state provider and have all of your state variable or data in one place. And using reducer, you can actually call different actions, which will basically update your state. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create store inside that. So what I'm going to do, I'll just create these some of the files first, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to do in there. So so the context API is basically what we are going to create. We are going to create a sort of like a provider, just like we saw with the Chakra UI for theme provider. So for context, we will going to have a context provider, which is so we are going to create a context and create a provider for that context. And then we are going to have initial state, which is basically going to be something like this. So our initial state is going to have three variables in it: the rooms, which is going to be an array of uh, all the rooms. Then we are going to have a current room. So as soon as user clicks on any room, we are going to set this to set that room as a current room. So we will remember that. And then we are going to have all the messages display. So depending on the room, we will be replacing the messages or adding new messages or things like that. And we are going to have some actions. So I'm just going to create some actions in here and then explain. So actions is nothing but again, sort of like a enum. So instead of writing these strings everywhere, I'm just setting them as a constant. So yeah, so I think this is all we need. We need a action to set a current room when the user clicks on the room. We need an action to set or load all the rooms. We need an action when user creates a new room, and then set methods when this room is selected, and add a message when user creates a new message. And then in reducer is basically it's going to be some like, well, I'm just going to copy again and just explain. So we are basically importing all the actions from actions, and then the reducer is going to basically take a state, which is our initial state in this case, or whenever the action is called. So the state, whatever the state of the state, we are going to pass that to a reducer function. And we are also going to pass action, which is going to have a type and data that needs to be used by that action. So type is again, it's just going to be a simple string, and we are just going to use our actions mentioned in here and create a switch case for that type. So all it says is action type when it's an action type. Current set current room. All I'm going to do is pass return a state. So all of these switch cases or actions in reducer are going to return a state. So if you don't already know, so what reducer does is basically it takes its current existing state and create a new copy of that state and with the updated values from the action and returns that as a new state. So that's basically how the context API works. So this is what we are doing in here. So when it's setting a current room, we want to return a state, return as everything. So from the state as it is, but only change the current room to be the room from the action that's been passed in action. So I'm just passing it as an item. So it's going to be set as a current room. Similarly, when it's a set rooms, which is means that we want to set all the rooms initially, so again, return the state as it is, but only update the rooms to be the action.item. And the current room is going to be null because we are basically, this means this method will be called only when the app is loaded for the first time and it's just going to load all the rooms. And so we don't really want to set any current room. You want to set it to null in case users are refreshing. And then set messages, it's again return the whole state, but only change the messages to be the action.items. And then add message, again, the same thing. What we are doing in here is then if it is add message, then return all the messages as it is, but also in that new array, add a new message that's been passed to the action. And then similarly for the add room, return all the rooms, but before returning all the rooms, add my new room at the start of the array instead of at the end of the array. And also, when user creates new room, I want to set that room as a current room as well. And for every any other actions, it's just going to return state as it is. So I'm just going to grab some code for the state provider, and then I'll explain what it's doing in there as well. So, so basically what we are doing in here, we are going to create the new state instance, so sorry, the context instance using the create context API from React, and that's just going to be called as a state context. And we are just going to export that as a using a use context, so that this will be passed with the provider to all the components inside our app. And in the provider, we can actually set the which basically takes an arguments, which is a reducer, which basically is our um, method which actually handles all the actions, and then the initial state, which is going to be our blank state, and then all the childrens that are inside that component. So this is how basically the provider works, and then the provider is going to have a value which is type a function kind of function, the hook, and that hook is basically use reducer, and then that reducer is going to take a reducer definition that we have in here and initial state. So this is what basically a skeleton. When using, we basically have to pass those things. So if I just go to index. So this is how basically you'll sort of like wrap your whole app inside the state provider. So just like we did with the Chakra UI, we are just going to wrap our app with our own state provider, and we're just going to pass the initial state, which is just a blank state, and the reducer, which basically um, handles all the actions and returns the new state. So with that being there, if we go to rooms, now if I just go ahead and see if there's anything else. Actually, yeah, we'll do other things as well so that we have some other data to support our components as well, rather than trying to split the whole components in different skeletons and then filling it. We'll probably do the other way. So what we are going to do is we are going to basically set up the GraphQL API now. So this is a very interesting part. So it'll be good for everybody to just concentrate on that. So what we are going to do is if we just go to our Amplify again. So if you remember, so we can add, we already added authentication categories, added authentication. Similarly, we can add APIs, we can add file storage and all that kind of things. So for the API, the way it works is we are going to create a context API, sorry, GraphQL APIs. There are two ways, but if I just quickly go to Amplify documentation, here you can see the way we're going to add this GraphQL API. So what I'm going to do is, so if you just see the status, I'll just expand this so you can see it much easier. So it's just showing us, so far we got the authentication in there. So what we are going to do is, I'm just going to say amplify add API, press run. And as always, it's just going to ask me a lot of questions. And all we need to do is answer the questions and everything will get set up automatically. So with Amplify, you can set up two types of APIs. One is GraphQL API, and other one is REST API. So you probably everyone knows about the REST APIs, but if you don't, it's basically another. So you will have multiple endpoints to provide data. Things like, for example, pages will if you get make a get call on the pages, you'll probably be expecting return all the pages. And if you request something like the pages slash the page ID or something like that, so you're going to expect the single page to be returned. So that's how basically this REST API is set up. The other way is GraphQL API, where there is no the that it doesn't have multiple endpoints, but what it has is you can pass in the 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 request which has the queries that you want to run, or if you are updating any data, so you actually send the update data and just call the mutation, or you can actually go ahead and subscribe to any mutations as well, so that whenever, for example, in our case, whenever the user creates new message, we want to create a subscription so that we are looking for new messages, and as soon as there is a new message, it will be pulled out as like a real time, and it's going to show you that message. So in this case, we are going to use GraphQL API. So if you select that, it's just going to ask me the name for the API. I'm just going to keep it to default. It's just asking me how do you want to set up authorization for that API. So there are ways to do that again. So you can use the API key, which is in general you'll see. But with the API key, what you have to make sure is you set up all your API methods accordingly so that the users who are supposed to access certain data only they can access and nobody else. So that you probably need to do a little bit manually. Uh, but other ways, you can actually use the Cognito user pool, which is what we are going to use. So we already set up the authentication, which is using Cognito. And the other ones are basically IAM user, basically just you can create users manually in your again using API as well in Amazon console, and you can allow different rights to those users. So for example, one IAM user could actually access all data, or he can mutate, but then other Cognito users can actually only handle and only change their own data and read other data and things like that. We'll go in more details when we write the schema for it, and then you will understand how it's all set up. So I'm just going to select that, and yeah, I think there are a few other things we can set up, but I'm just going to say no. I'm just done. And then it's just asking me, do you want annotated GraphQL schema? I am going to say no. And then it's just asking me the schema template. So is it going to be one-to-one or is it going to be one-to-many relationship? In our case, it's going to be one-to-many because we have rooms and then every room can have multiple messages. So we are just going to select that. In some cases, you will have more complicated structure where it's a many-to-many relationship is available and things like that. So you can actually, depending on your structure, you can actually go ahead and pick the right template. I'm just going to select one-to-many. So here you can see the example it shows, like, for example, in this case, it has a blocks and block can have multiple posts and posts can have multiple comments like that, so on and so forth. So now it's just saying, do you want to edit your schema now? So I'm just going to say yes. So when I say yes, all it's going to do is it's going to complete the process of creating GraphQL, but it's just going to open up the schema.graphql file, which is where we will be uh, writing the schema for our database. So this is the place where you will actually define how your database looks like. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the schema that I would like to use, and then I'm just going to talk about that schema. So if I just save this, and then if I just go to in here, API. So yeah, if you just search for Amplify GraphQL schema and the first link, this is where you can read more about all the directives and the types and everything. But we'll just go in general a little bit. So the schema will be defined in something like this, and what the schema has different directives for every type. So if model is basically sort of like a table that you want to create, and inside model, you can have different index keys. So you can set up the index keys using in a key a directive. And then the authentication out is basically going to define the rule for authorization, who can access this table or the model and who can modify it and etc. And then we are going to have a connection, which is basically how you want to join this table or this model with other models. And then there are many other ones. Like if you can actually write a function in the database as well. So what happens if we send any data to that model? It's just going to call do some write some well, in this case it's just going to call lambda function, and it's just the end of result of that would be updating data in another model or anything. uh, then the other interesting one would be the searchable. So if you have more complicated data structure, you can enable the searching functionality on that model. So you can search by many other keywords or many other fields in your model. If you want to version your data as well, so you can use this directive to version it. This is another interesting one. This is a third-party directive for TTL, which just basically is time to live. So you can actually set time to live for your data to be in the database, and after that time is passed, it's going to basically clear that data. So that's something interesting as well, if you want to try. So if we go back to our own schema, so our own schema is going to have basically two tables, one table for to store all the rooms and another table to store the message, all the messages. So the way we declare that this is a table is by adding this model directive. And then we have authentication, and then inside authentication, I'm just declaring the rules, which says if the owner, so owner is basically who the person or the user who is actually creating the entry to that room model. So for that owner, I'm just going to allow all the methods. Excuse me. So if we go back to the authentication, you will see the ways it's set up. So this is so who is allowed and what is the field to check for that person, and then the operations that that user can do. So if you want to allow all the operations, you can just leave this blank, so you don't need to add any operations. So basic by default, owner will be allowed all the operations. But I also have another rule, which is basically means the private, which means all the users who are logged in, for them, I want to also allow read permission on this model so that they can read all the rules. And then I'm just making it searchable. I don't think we are using the search functions in this session, but this is all you need to do is just add this directive, and then it will look at all the um, fields, and it's just going to create a searchable method query for you. So in my room object, I'm going to have ID. Again, the ID, this is there are different data types. So if I just go back to types, so here you can see all the different types that are supported by AWS GraphQL APIs. So ID is basically sort of like identity. If you're familiar with SQL, so you probably know the identity field. So this is more or less like that, but it's a GUID, and it's just going to create the ID if you don't provide it. And then the string, integer, float, boolean, they're all called common. And they also have some other AppSync. So AppSync is basically like a managed service where you can actually host your GraphQL API. So it's AppSync is going to provide you some tools where you can actually run your queries just to test them out and see whether all your queries works or not. Yes, with AppSync, you actually have other types as well, scalar types as well, like for to store date or time or date time, email, JSON, phone number, or if you want to store IP address, etc. Things like that. So I think we are going to use one Amplify defined scalar type, which is AWS datetime. But other ones are like ID, string, and then the owner is basically going to be another ID, which is going to be the coming from the cognito user ID. And then we are going to have messages, which is just the array of message. And then we are defining the connection. The connection is basically is based on the key name uh, message by room, and the fields that we are going to connect on from this table is the ID, and then the sort field is going to be created at. So it's going to sort all the data based on the created at. So the message table is going to have the similar rules. So the owner can actually add, edit, delete anything, and but the all other logged in users, they can only read. And then we are defining the key which will be used in here. So the key is called again messages by room, and the field that we are using from this table is room ID. So the way the connection and the key works is, so ID from this table will be joined with the room ID on this table. So the room ID is basically our foreign key in this table. And then we also want to create a query field, which is going to create a query uh, for this connection. And the fields are basically ID, the room ID again from the room table, the message, sender's name, which is going to be user's name, created at, which is the date time, and the owner ID is again the person who created this message, and the room is basically going to give us the details of the room itself. Again, it's going to connect on the room ID field. And apart from that, we created a one subscription. We'll go through the subscription when we are actually dealing with it. But for now, this is how you basically set up your subscriptions as well. Um, so so we just created our schema. What we need to do is if we do amplify status, it'll show you again the authentication, and we just created a API as well. So now if we do amplify push, just gonna say yes. So it's going to ask me, do you want to generate the code for this for your schema? I'm going to say yes, so that it's just going to create all the code for me. So I don't need to really write anything. So it's just asking me which language do you want to use for all the queries and mutations and all. So I'm just going to say JavaScript, and where do you want to store all these files? So it's just going to store in source, GraphQL, and all the other. It's going to create its own folders and files, so which is fine for me. And then it's just saying, do you want to update all the possible GraphQL operations like queries, and also yeah, I want to create all of them. It's asking me in your queries how deep you want to go. So, for example, if you have like a nested data structure, like for example, you have a blog, and the blog will have many posts, and each post will have many comments, and then the comment could have multiple likes. So all it's saying is like in your written data, how deep you want to go. So if you are loading a post blog, do you want to load all the posts inside it, or do you want to load all the posts with the comments inside it, or things like that? So in our case, I'm just going to keep it to a default to 2. So it's just going to run few things, and just going to update the cloud with our API, and also it's going to create all the files that we need to use. So meanwhile, if you just go back in here. So yeah, here we can see the different, well, the way we can set up authentication and all. So in here you can see the operations that are allowed on any model. So read, create, update, delete. So we can actually go ahead and tell that yeah, the specific user can only create in this case, but he can't do anything else. So, and in this case, the owner can only read. No store on an object. That's strange. But yeah, this is how you basically set up your authentication. Let me see what else is in there. Yeah, that's all. Feel free to go ahead and read again anyway. So it's going to take some time. Just going to quickly see if there are any questions. No? Okay, cool. So while that's doing what it's supposed to do, I'm just going to start grabbing. Well, actually, what I'm going to do is I want to also use some my own APIs, well, the methods. So I'm just going to quickly create some more folders and files, and then I'm going to explain what they are for. Right. So what I'm doing here, while it's creating its own queries and mutations and everything, uh, what I did, I created some of my own queries. So to list all the rooms and get all the messages only. So this is just only as an example. We are not really going to use it. Well, we can actually use it. We'll see. But what it's saying is instead of getting everything for the list room, all I want to do is I want to grab only the room ID, name, and when it was created and updated. And similarly, for the message, all I want to do is get a room ID, message, sender name, and everything, and create an update date. And in here, I'm just going to write this. All I'm doing is I'm creating an API manager constant, which is going to have basically four variables, which are functions, again, functional components. Functions, and those are going to be get all the rooms, add new room, get messages by room, and add message. So all of these methods are going to return a promise. So there are two ways you can call async methods or not async method, basically wait for the results. So either you can use promise, which means that it's going to return a promise at the end of the execution, or you can actually use await sync. So in here, I'm just going to create, I'm just create using promise. So all these functions are going to return a promise of some sort. And what it's doing is it's just going to call, we'll go through the API calls as well. Let's just see. No, it's still not finished. So the way you usually call the query, you will usually use the GraphQL API on in your Amplify app using Amplify AppSync is you'll use the API dot GraphQL, and then inside that you want to run a GraphQL operation and pass the query and then the query, whatever the input required for that query. In this case, the list room only, which is our list room only in here, and you can see in the the inputs that it needs is a filter if you want to filter the data, and how many items you want to bring back. And the next token is basically if you want to set up sort of like a paging. So you get only 10 records. And when you get 10 records, it's going to return you a token. And if you pass that token next time, so the token is sent back in here. So the next time if you pass that token and say also set the limit to 10, so instead of getting the same 10 items again, it's going to use the token and return the next 10 items. So that way you can actually set up your paging. So in here, I'm saying whatever the limits that's been passed to the function, use that limit, and if there is a next token, use that token, and then it's just going to return. So it's going to call this, and what that uh, is going to bring back is the items, which are the rooms. So in here, you can see. So once the query is executed, we are going to get a response, which is going to have a data dot list rooms dot items, which is where our items reside. So we'll see when this completes, once we run this, so we can actually see how the data looks like. And then we are just wrapping this all in using the try catch, so that if there is an error, so we're just going to return null rooms and error. Similarly, for add new room, so in here a little bit different. So instead of calling a query, what we are calling a mutation. So if we go, it's not created yet, hopefully. Not too long, but once it's created, you will see the mutation, the way it looks. So again, something similar to what we did to call the queries. So we are going to say API.GraphQL, and then we are just going to pass the GraphQL operation, which is going to accept the mutation name. And then the input is going to be, in this case, the room name and the owner. So the username is basically the GUID for that user. So we are going to pass this, and we are going to pass those to the mutation and create a room. And once the room is created, it's just going to return that newly created room with all other properties as well. So all we are doing is returning a promise with that room. And again, similarly, with if there is an error, so it's just going to return null as a room with the error message. Similarly, we are going to bring all the messages. So again, in here, I'm just setting, so I'm just passing the room ID. And if you remember, we created this connection to list all the messages using by room. So if you go back in here, so this is the query that will be created and which will be using room ID, and then return all the messages by that room ID. So that's what we are doing. We are going to again call the GraphQL operation, use and pass this query with the room ID, and then the limit is just going to be 100, and then the next token is going to be next token. And once it's executed, we are going to return all the messages which will reside in this way. We can access this, and then the add message is just going to be again another mutation. Create message, which accepts the room ID and the message and the sender's name. So the sender's name is going to be something like a user's given name, and then the space, and then the family name. That's what I'm going to pass. And then we also owner, we are going to pass the own users user ID, which is GUID again. And then in return, we are going to get the message that just created, and we are just going to pass that back. Okay, while that's doing, I think it's just going to take a bit more time. While that's doing, I'm just going to quickly grab room. Yeah, it's just going to take a few more minutes, hopefully, not too long. But we'll just go through what I did in the rooms here, and then hopefully, once everything's done, we should be able to, if you try it now, it's going to throw us a lot of errors. So we'll just quickly go through what I'm doing in here. So let's just write this for now. So if you remember in our rooms list, we have a button to add new room. And on click of that button, it's just going to go, what it's going to do is it's just going to set this flag on open. And then on open is basically a function which takes a true or false. And it's just going to set is open, you state variable constant, which is going to set open or close. And what we are using it for is we have a room model. So once you click on that, we want to show a model where user can actually enter the room name. So again, this is a model that's from Chakra UI, and we're just adding the header and then the close button, and then in the body, all I have is a form, the label room name and the input. I'm just giving it a reference. I'm using useref so that I can remember, I can basically access the value of it when I'm creating the room. So it's just going to, so when you click up press key, basically when I press type a room name and press enter, I want to basically add a room, and that's what we're going to do. And also, if you click on add a room button, we are going to do the same thing. So in here, I'm just basically checking on key press. If the key is basically key character code is 13, which is the enter key, I'm just going to call add room. Similarly, when you click on add room, I'm just going to call add room. And add room is doing is basically, since we have that initial ref set to this input, we can try and access the initial ref dot current dot value, which means if there is a value entered in that input, then only call this. If it doesn't, then don't do anything. In here, what I'm doing is I have a flag. The input component from Chakra has a prop call is invalid. So what that is, it's a boolean. So if you set it to true, it's just going to basically set a error border, which is in this case I'm just set it to crimson. So it's just going to change the border of that input to kind of like a reddish. And the way I'm checking is by saying if the value doesn't exist, then it's invalid. So just make the input red. And so in add room, so yeah, if the value exists, all I'm going to do in here is I'm going to call it, so we already created this method called add new room, which accepts a room name and a user. So I'm just passing the value of that input, which is the room name and the user. So again, user, as we've seen previously as well. So in here, Where's it gone? So we're just using the use effect, and all I'm doing is I'm just creating a async function so that I can wait for the user to be brought back from the current authenticated user method, and then once it's gone, then I'm just setting the user and calling that function. So once the user is available, so obviously we'll pass that to add new room and wait for the response, and the response is basically going to have our room inside it. And in here, I'm just calling the dispatch method from the reducer. So if you see, I don't know why it's taking so long. It's taking a lot longer than usual. But anyways, so yeah, so the dispatch and the create room actions and room, sorry, the create current room and the I don't know why room, it's these are taking the so basically long. It's states. So I'm just taking basically importing the current room and rooms in here, and also importing the dispatch from our use state value, which is the context API that we created, and it's going to have access to the dispatch, which has the use reducer method. So we are going to dispatch the action. The action is going to have a type and some sort of data. So in this case, where is it going? So in this case, once we add a room, what we want to do is that add that room also to our list of rooms. So if we go back to our reducer, you can see in here, so once add room is called, so we are going to return all the rooms plus the rooms that are coming from the action, which is action.array. Yeah. And then the other methods are, so other methods are basically, I'm using another use effect, which is waiting on the dispatch. What it's going to do is it's going to get all the rooms when we are loading the page for the first time, and going to call dispatch using the action set rooms and going to pass all the rooms. But before setting the rooms, what I'm doing in here is I'm just sorting all the rooms by created date. And then after that, once the current room is set, so what it's going to do, what we should see other one here, yeah, the select room. So whenever user clicks on any of the rooms, we are going to call the dispatch method again by passing the action set current room, and the room is going to be the room that user clicked on. And then once the select room is called, you can see in here what happens is set current room. So the current room is going to be set to the room that's been passed. So that's why what we are doing here is we are looking at the current room, and as soon as the current room is changed, then this use effect will be called, and side effect will be called. And if the current room exists, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call an API method get messages by the room. I'm going to pass the room ID and get all the messages for that room and call the dispatch method action by passing the action set messages and pass all the messages that are coming from this API. Yeah, that's all we have in here. Come on, hopefully it should it should finish really soon. Because usually it hardly takes like a couple of minutes. I don't know why it's taking so long. So what it's basically doing is it's basically use a service on AWS called Cloud Formation. to create all the resources for that. So it's basically going to create a database, which is so in our AWS, if we go back to our AWS, so it's uses the database type called the DynamoDB, which is again NoSQL database, and it's just going to create all the tables. So yeah, as you can see, it's just creating just created all the tables. So in our case, we just have two tables, uh, which is the messages and the rooms. So rooms is where all the rooms are, and the messages for all the rooms. And hopefully we should be able to access something. So AppSync, like I said, AppSync is like a managed services where we actually host our GraphQL APIs. So here you can see the GraphQL API has been created. And if I go to our schema, so schema is basically what we created, but it's just going to expand that schema and then also going to create other things like the input model, which will be passed, for example, in this case, the create room input, which will be passed to a create room method mutation. And then if it is a delete message, then we're just going to send a delete ID, well, the ID of the message or the room, and so on and so forth. And if we go to our queries, this is where you can actually, this is like our playground to try and test our GraphQL API. So API has three different uh, types of things. One is a query, so which is basically to get any some type of data, and the mutations where we will actually update or edit or delete any of the data, and then the subscriptions is basically where we look out for things like when the room is created. So for example, here you can see on message created, on create room or update room. So whenever these the method the mutations like create room or update room is called, so it's going to if you are subscribed to this subscription, so it's going to return the newly created room or updated room in this example. So if I go back to our schema, you can see in here, I created a subscription. So reason behind that is because by default, you will get all the subscriptions, but they are not going to run based on the ID, any particular fields. For example, in our case, whenever user creates a new message, we want to pull that message and display that message in everywhere else. So for example, if I have opened this chat app and then if Praveen opens up his the same chat app, and if I add new message to a room that Praveen has opened, only then I want to show that message in his room as well. But say if Praveen has another room open and not the same room as me. And if I enter a message in here, I don't want the subscription to pull that message because he's not really looking at that room. So that's why we need a subscription where it takes a room ID, which is what we did. So we created a subscription which is called on message created, which takes a room ID and it returns a message which is just newly created. It's just going to look at the mutations. So whenever the create message mutation is called, it's going to compare the room ID that's in that message. And if the room ID matches, then if I am subscribed to this subscription, then it's just going to basically give me that newly created message and the app will basically display that message. So that's how it's been created in here. So if you go back in here, it just takes an argument, which is a room ID, and its returns type is a message, which has all the details about the message sender and also has a room, which details of the room. So in here, we can actually try and create a room, for example. Let's just see. So this is, like I said, this is our playground. So before we run, we have to obviously log in because this is just like your own app, but instead of calling it programmatically, so we are actually using the playground that's been given by GraphQL API. So let me just check quickly what's the client ID. And yeah. So in here, I can actually just log in with the same account that I log into my app as well. So this way, it's just going to give me all the ownership of my own data and access to all the things that I can do. So in here, I'm just going to use mutation of type create room, and I'm just going to pass the room name, which is say my first room, and the owner. Um, okay, we're gonna pass this. Well, actually, I can just grab it from here. Uh, I don't need to cause. What I can do is I can just go to Cognito and grab this username, set ID, and pass that in here. And then in return, what I want is just the name and the owner. Boom. So as soon as you run this, so it's just going to create that room. So if I run query to list rooms and just return all the rooms, and if I just run that query, you can see that it's just returning the rooms that we just created. So that's good. So yeah, finally the GraphQL API is set up, so we can go ahead and look at that as well. So what it has done is it just created a folder called GraphQL, like we mentioned, and then you're going to see four different type of files. So the schema notation is just basically the whole schema. So if you want to see the type of inputs that any query accepts or the mutation accepts, so this is where you'll see. And then it has all the queries. So if I just so yeah, you can see, so it has created all the queries that we need to get the room, list rooms, get message, list messages, and etc. So for example, in the get message, we'll be expecting you to pass the ID, so because it's just getting the single message. Whereas in list message, it's just basically going to ask you how many messages you want to get, and the next one if you're passing it, or the filter, and it's just going to return all the messages based on the filters. So that, and then we have all the mutations as well, which are create room, update room. So we'll probably be using a couple of them as well. And then we also have subscriptions, and these are all the standard ones. The one we created ourselves was this one, which takes a room ID and returns the all the messages for that room ID. So yeah, I think if we hopefully take provider. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I think we already been through the room. So if we just click and see if everything works. So if I just, as you can see, when I'm typing in here, that's fine. But if I just try to focus away from that, it's showing it in a red border. So that's working. So also you can see what we did in here is whenever uh, the app is loaded, we are basically trying to get all the rooms. And once we get all the rooms, we are basically storing them in our state. So which is working. So here you can see that my first room is basically brought in here. So if I just create another room, it's just going to select that room as well. So it's going to create, and if we just go and run query again, here you can see my second room is there as well. Um, okay, cool. So we got that. So what we want next is we want, let me see. So I'm just going to fill in the room. It's done. And then now maybe chat. So quickly, I'm just again going to go through what the chat is doing. And also, if I go to my home, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to see if that works. Clearly, it doesn't. Okay. Um, I'm just going to import it like this. I don't know why it's not working. Yeah. Right. Let me just try. Can you see anything wrong I'm doing? I can't really understand why it's not working. So all I'm doing is So I got the chat plant here, and I'm just exporting it as a default, which is fine. And then in components, I'm exporting it as a chart here as well.
Let me also look through it.
I guess I'm just, you know,
So you are exporting chat, home, nav, and rooms. Okay. So all those exports are perfect, right? What does it say? You can't. Okay, let's come back. Okay, module not found. Can't resolve dot chat. Okay, so you're in the components thing. See,
yeah,
I guess see it should be should it be dot chat slash chat because you might need an
yeah,
index
that's what I
file.
thought.
Yeah, save it.
Yeah.
Okay, so dot message slash message. Okay, cannot resolve dot message slash message. Okay, go into the chat.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's right. No, that's right. No, because I created all the components, but I forgot to
See,
create
there
this
are
one
there are two
component as
ways of
well.
you can use an importing of
No,
components.
yeah,
Yeah, so
I think it just I'm missing another component that I'm
right,
supposed to create. So I'm just quickly going to grab because we are already gone past our
got it.
time.
Yeah,
So is that, and I'm just going to update right there.
okay, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully should be fine. Let's see what does it says now. Yeah, it's loading. So I'll just quickly go through what we are doing in here. So we've been through rooms. So what happens? So when we select a room, we're just calling the dispatch and then setting the current room.
Yeah,
And then in chat box, so if I just go to home, all I did was so I imported these two components in here. So in my chat component, I'm just displaying all the chat messages
right.
and the input box underneath. So the way I'm doing it is in again the box. And again, I'm using color mode because I want to set the background. So here you can see the background changes based on the color mode. So
Perfect.
that's what I'm doing. If the color mode is light, then I'm loading this. If it is dark, then load this background and set the scroller for that. And then after that, if the current room is selected, then display messages. If it is not selected, then obviously you can see that it just is looking
Yeah,
for message, select the room.
perfect.
Going to do that. And then if the room is selected, then I'm basically just importing the messages from our state with the dispatch as well, so that when the new message is created, we can actually display that. So in here, I'm just going through all the messages first. I'm just sorting them as a basic. So again, we can have some methods where we can actually sort of like sort out these messages and all, or we can actually add that in the API itself. So everything is sorted in the state. But I'm just doing it in here so that I'm sorting all the messages by the date time. So to do that, to sorting, I'm just looking at the created date and then just making the difference and then the calculating difference and the sorting it by the ascending so that the recent one will come up on first. And then just going to map through all the, so iterate through each message and then the call the message component. And the message component is basically going to only, if I go to here, it's just going to display that message. But what it's going to do is I just have this one condition here, the margin left. So what I'm going to do in here is that I'm just going to check the user.username and the message.owner. If they are both same, which just means that it's my own message, in that case, I'm just going to align that to right. So margin left is going to be auto. So there is a space on the left. And if it's not my message, then I'm just going to align that to the left. So the space is on the right. And then all it's doing is displaying that message. Before that, I'm displaying the avatar again using the sender name from the message and the message itself, and then I'm just formatting that created date for the message using new date dot to local string, and then underneath that I'm just displaying the sender message. That's all I'm doing here. And then if we go back to our chat, so this is where we display other messages, and then underneath here again I'm using the flex box so that the direction is column, and the most of the space will be used by the messages. At the bottom I'm giving 0.1 flex to the box div, which will include the input. Again, in here I'm just adding another flex box so that I can display the text box and then the button on the side. So for that, I'm using the flex component, and then in that I have input component. Similarly, I'm just giving it a ref, and if the user types a message and then press enter key, then and it has a message, then it's just going to call the add message method. Similarly, if the user clicks on the add message icon button, which has the icon of send, it's just going to call the same method. So quickly going through the variables that we have in here, constants we have. So this is where basically we are getting from our state context API. So we are just bringing out the current state in the dispatch, so we can call the different actions. We are bringing in color mode using the use color hook, and then we are setting up a constant to refer to the text box for new messages. And then a div ref, this is basically I'm using reference to the div of the, I'll show you, where's it gone? Of all the messages. So, which is where we are displaying all the lists. So what I'm going to do is I'm just basically scroll down to the bottom.
Vinayak, just give me a second. Something is wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, looks like my internet got dropped. Crazy thing.
All right.
Um, yeah, just a sec.
Can you continue the stream, or does it
I'm actually
basically
trying to
unstable?
continue the stream. Just a second.
All right.
Okay, looks fine. Looks fine. Yes, you can continue. Go on. Not sure where it
Okay.
was cut. Apologies for the disconnection. The stream got intermittently disconnected due to some network failure. And sorry,
Mhm.
would you like to explain a couple of steps from the previous thing what you did? Maybe that would be
Yeah, sure.
perfect.
Yeah, sure. No
Yep,
worries.
go on. The stage is yours.
So yeah, cheers. So yeah, I think we're not going to take any longer than another 10 minutes. So hopefully we'll wrap it up soon. Um, so basically, I was showing through the different use effect hooks that are set up to render things like, so in here, I'm just setting up the user, getting the user currently logged in user, so I can just display pass that to when we are calling the create message. I'm setting up the subscription. The way I'm doing this is I declare this variable, and I'm just going to set up graph. I'm just going to call API or GraphQL and then pass the GraphQL operation, including the subscription method that the query we have, and which takes room ID, and the room ID we are just basically getting it from current room.id, and then we call subscribe. So what it will do is like it will check the subscription definition and then set subscription for that. Whenever whenever the new message is created, and then when the next time it executed or the message created, it's just going to pass that message in here to this function. This is basically a callback function, and then the new message will have a value dot data dot the message on message created, and then in here what I'm doing is basically I'm just checking if the owner of that message is same as the currently logged in user. Then basically I don't want to create I don't want to add that message again, because the message will be added manually again in here. So if we go in here, so what we are doing in add message is we are just calling that API method by passing the room ID and then the message. And then once the message is created, once we get it back, we are just manually adding that to the array in our state. So that's why we don't want to add that again. So that's why we're just checking only if the username, user ID is different than the owner of that message, then only call the dispatch method, which is basically to add the message that's been newly created for that room. So that's all we are doing in here. So if we just go ahead and so we can see that in here, and yeah, so if we just go and open up our inspect, clear that all. So if I just select in here and say no, not add row, and if I just say add a message and press enter, so as soon as I press enter, so what is doing is it just calling that API to add the create new message, and also adding that into state. And then the subscription, since we are in this room, it's subscribed to that method the action of create message, and then once the message is created, it's just going to give us the new message created. So you have to dig in a little bit deeper for that. So the new message is an object which has a value dot data dot on message created, which is basically an object which has all the details of the new message. So if I had to show this in say Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, I don't know again. My internet died this time, so I guess we are taking turns. Yeah, I'll just. Yeah, so yeah, I think hopefully everyone heard about the subscriptions, and what I was trying next was I was just going to create a new account and then try and show if how the real-time update works. So yeah, so there. So here we can see once I logged in as a different user, so I can go ahead and see here, and if I just make it short, and if I say press enter, what happening here? Yeah, I guess when we got disconnected, I think the subscription got disconnected as well. So I had to refresh that. So as you can see, if I say another, you see that just displays up in here automatically. Similarly, if I say here, it just comes up in
Wow,
there as
that's
well.
cool.
So yeah, so that's how basically subscriptions work. So hopefully, I
Nice.
think we try and cover a few basics of Amplify, and the way the authentication we can set it up, and the GraphQL APIs. I don't think we explained it very well, but hopefully I think you get the gist. And
So to quickly
just before,
summarize what all things
yeah,
that we have used and what all things that we made to make this particular
yeah.
WhatsApp
So
clone.
yeah, so what we used is mainly we used Amplify
Hmm.
service from AWS to basically set up the whole backend for our app.
Yeah.
So the back in terms of whether it's a web app or mobile app, it's not going to change.
Hmm.
So the backend will still be same. So still the authentication will be set up exactly same way. The GraphQL API will be set up exactly same way. There is no difference whatsoever at all. The
Okay.
only difference will be in the front end where we actually create a different UIs for mobile and different UI for web. That's the only difference. And then probably you may use different hooks based on if you're using Chakra, so they have different hooks for web, and if you're using some other framework for native React Native UI, then you'll be using their hooks. But in terms of context API and all that kind of things, they all stays the same. There's no much
Okay.
difference. So and for GraphQL, we use AppSync, which is managed services. So basically, it just creates a GraphQL API, sets it up for you, and then also creates the database, which is a DynamoDB NoSQL database, and it basically links that to the GraphQL API.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we use only so far only two things: GraphQL API, the APIs, and authentication. But there are many other things like the S3 buckets. You can set up S3 buckets, and where you can actually say that only the person who uploads the image can access image, or he can upload image to certain bucket, and others can only read images from that bucket, but can't add upload any new images and things like that. So that's
Got
all.
it.
Happens quite automatically. So all you have to do is like customize your templates or set some configurations, and that's also everything else will be taken care by Amplify. So before
Okay.
Amplify, it used to be like this, that you have to go ahead and set up an EC2 instance and then create a hosting and set up your hosting and then
Something
set up
like
your
Passport.js. How does Passport.js come into play here? In case
Passport is. I think I haven't used it to be honest, but it's mainly I think again for sort of like authentication.
authentication things.
Yeah,
Yeah. So authentication
So
is now
yeah, I think
handled by AWS again, right?
it. Yes, yeah. I mean, it's still your own sort of like a own user pool, your own uh, like authentication groups and all. But yeah, it's basically managed by AWS itself. So you're not basically creating any database for it. It's just a managed service, so it just handles everything about like managing the users and all. Whereas in GraphQL API, you actually you have an actual database, DynamoDB database, where you can actually go ahead and access that as well. So uh, um, in future, if we make more series, we can actually look at how we can set up a Lambda functions which will access the DynamoDB database directly instead of using
Yeah, that would
GraphQL.
be
We can
cool.
actually
Sure.
access the database and we can do things like when there is a new message or when there is a new we can actually access the S3 buckets as well. So someone uploads a new message, sorry, the new image. So there is something good. I think we can do that. I think that'll be very interesting. So what I want to do is like I want to set up a so users should be able to upload add images to their message in the chat
Okay.
room. But what we want to do is like someone tries to be really smart and add some message or maybe say pornographic message or something like that, and we want to filter it out. So the way we would do it is as soon as someone uploads an image to S3 bucket, we have a Lambda function which is looking at that S3 bucket, and that Lambda
Okay.
function will be basically looking at some AI-based tools from AWS to parse that image and look for this type of content. And if it is a pornographic content, so then we basically delete that image then and there, so the image doesn't get
And another
spread
thing is there
anywhere.
is no end-to-end encryption like how WhatsApp provides, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do that. We can set up encryptions as well. I haven't really looked
But
at
if
in
you do
more
the
details.
end-to-end encryption, you cannot give it to the Amplify to check or like the artificial intelligence thing to filter out
No, you
illegal
can,
content.
but the way you do that is basically you're not going to. I think you will be setting up some sort of API gateways. So again, there'll be some sort of Lambda function which will be taking, say, for example, taking the every image from S3 buckets. So instead of accessing images from S3 buckets, you'll be using API gateway, calling the API gateway, and say, look, I want to access this image. So the API gateway will basically call the Lambda function, and that Lambda function will basically access that image, encrypt or do whatever it needs to do, maybe resize that image to certain request or based on request and all, and then pass back that image. And that way we can basically completely stop the S3 access for outside world and only accessible through the APIs, and we can encrypt it that way. But yeah, there is many other things we can do. I think everything is going to take some time to explain. It needs a lot of time, especially for me. Things like the if whenever there is HTML involved and CSS involved, it just takes more time for me.
All right, I
Um,
can give some hand on that because I'm good with
yeah,
HTML and
exactly.
CSS.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. I think in future, what we should do is like we should do like the live share on the Visual Studio, and then you write the front end and I write the back end or something like that. So
Yeah,
that'll be
that's a
good.
cool idea. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I want to do is last thing. First thing is I want to commit. So that all the code is in GitHub. And then what I want to do quickly in few minutes is how we can actually host that as well. So Amplify is, so I think we used so far authentication and GraphQL API, but there is also hosting that we can use from Amplify. So I'm just going to quickly log in and YouTube chat. So as you can see, every app in Amplify has a front end and a back end here. So we set up a backend, and in backend we basically set up all the authentication and API. So you can see here categories added, authentication and API. But what we can also do is front end as well. So in front end, it's sort of like a CI/CD pipeline, but it's not real CI/CD pipeline. It's just basically automatically it just picks up all the commits and builds your code and deploys it to S3 bucket. So the way we can do is like we just say, okay, where is your code? It's on GitHub, and we're just going to give authorization and logged in. So now it's just saying select the repo. That's the repo, and it's just going to show me all the branches. And I just want to deploy only master branch. Click next. And then this is it's basically showing me all the settings that we can use to build, and also it's already recognizes that we'll just select the backend here, and if we don't really have anything else, so that's all really we have here. And then it's just going to check what does it need to do for, because it can actually access your package.json file and see what other commands you have for building and deploying. And also you can so you don't need to worry about that. Saying select a row. Okay. Yeah. So what it's saying is it just we need to create another role which will be used for to deploy the front end and the back end. So we just created that role, and if we just say save and deploy, hopefully it's not going to take another hour. So here you can see just getting the branch, pull the branch, and it's just provisioning the build for that branch. And then you can see as it's showing now, it's in build stage. So this way you can, if you have, say, for example, you have one branch which is a master branch, which is your production branch, so that goes on our production. And you can also have another branches, say dev branch, where you actually are in mid of developing all new features. So you can actually connect other branches as well. So all you do is like connect branch, and then if you have the branches, it will show up in here from GitHub, and then you just select that branch and then follow the same step that you did, and it will basically show up another section here for that branch, and it will also have a URL where you can actually, once everything is deployed, you can actually access that. So this way what you do is like, so I'll be writing some code, I'll be adding some new feature, and then commit it and just push it to GitHub. I don't need to worry anything at all, and everything gets deployed to my test site. And then all I do is just probably go on to test site, or just send that test link to someone, and then they can easily straight away get the updates. So again, there is a few more things we can do in here as well. So if, because this is a very basic pipeline, so if you go to code pipelines. In here, we can actually set up more complicated pipelines as well. So it's a pretty much similar way. So you basically, when create, just center the name, and then it's just going to ask where is your source code is on GitHub. I don't know if it is. Basically, you just select the same way. I don't know if it is Git. Do you know if it is Git
You mean like
Enterprise
just
or
go
what?
with the latest version, as simple as that? It is definitely not enterprise server, but we will
All
go
right.
with
Okay.
version 2, which is the latest one. And then,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just asking me the permissions as well again, and it's just going to show hopefully. Well, yeah, in here. So I need to sort of like create new app in here as
okay.
well again.
Then in that case, do you want to try out? Oh, okay. Yeah,
No, it should be fine. And then I'm just going to connect to that app. And then now it's
cool.
going to show me all the repositories from my GitHub. So if I select this, and then it will show me the branch, I can select that branch, and then I'll just say whatever the defaults is, and then click on next. And then build provider again. Yeah, in here you can actually set up a build. If not, you can actually skip that stage as well if it is a static website.
Okay,
Or if you want to have anything specific, you can just select. But you get the gist really. So that's how you do that. And if you just go back to our Amplify, still build. So while building, you can actually go in here as well, and you can see what it's all doing as well. So you can get the, yeah, since because we selected the backend as well, so it's so the backend was in dev environment. So what it's going to do is like it's going to create a production environment for that backend and deploy everything on that backend as well as deploy our front end as well. That's why it's just taking a bit more time. But once it's all deployed, you can always just you just need to click on this link, and I don't think it's going to show anything, but this is where your app will appear once the you complete the first deployment. That's
that's
all it
cool.
says. So
Okay,
hopefully you should be able to keep an eye on this and have a look. So but if not, just give it a try. I think it's not that difficult anyway. So all you're doing is just selecting GitHub repo, and then everything else is just the default configuration, and then there you go. In a few minutes time, you will get your app deployed as well straight away. So this way, you don't need to worry about future deployments
that's
anyway.
cool. That's an easy way of like deploying things.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I think yeah, I think it'll be good to I think finish up in here. But if there is any questions, I think
I guess there are not much questions
yeah.
right now.
So I think if someone is watching this later on in the
Yes,
recording, if you have any questions, then just add them in
please
comments, and
leave
we will
your
try to answer
questions
them.
on the comments.
Yeah.
Vinayak will be happy to come back and answer them.
Yeah, definitely. And then hopefully we'll try and arrange some better series with the better
Something
presentations.
shorter, something easier, or
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, cool.
cool.
Sounds good. On that note, I think and we could we should just
Okay, you can stop
finish
the
off
screen
the
sharing in
stream
that
here.
case.
Yeah,
Cool. That was a powerful presentation today, and I hope
it
everyone
was quite
enjoyed it.
lengthy.
This is the one of the longest sessions I guess in my channel, and
Yeah,
maybe yeah, that's
I
something
think
people will be
yeah,
looking at the whole thing, and then maybe so I'm just gonna do one thing. So once this video is processed, we'll like do sections by section, and then like
yeah,
use the sections so that it might
yeah.
help others. So cool, that was a powerful one today.
Mhm.
Thank you, Vinayak.
Cool. Yeah, I couldn't explain much better with Chakra UI, but feel free to have a look at their documentation. It's quite easy, I think, at least for me. I don't need to worry about adding all
Definitely.
the styles and
Yeah.
all. So I think it's good. Yeah, cool.
Awesome. Then okay. So have a nice day, everyone, and let's see how it goes.
Yeah,
So see you
stay
all.
safe.
Stay
See you
safe
all
and stay
later.
homes. All right.
Yeah,
Cool
see you.
then.
Bye bye.
Bye.